What Prince Louis whispered next would become the spark that ignited a firestorm. The guard, initially taken aback, leaned down to catch the words, his face registering surprise. Then, as if the weight of the moment had pressed upon him, his expression shifted to one of concern. His posture stiffened and his eyes darted toward the senior aides watching from just beyond the velvet rope. Something in the air had changed, something no one else could quite pinpoint, but everyone could feel. Within moments, another guard stationed on the opposite side of the crowd began speaking into his communication device. The energy shifted from excitement to unease. Security presence doubled in the blink of an eye, though the crowd, still unaware of the unfolding drama, continued to cheer. On the outside, it seemed like any other royal outing, but behind the scenes, the palace was already in damage control mode. Inside Buckingham Palace, the calm that had so carefully been cultivated began to unravel. Princess Catherine, always the epitome of composure, moved swiftly. Her hand gently rested on Louis's shoulder, guiding him back into position. But in that brief, delicate moment, the veneer of royal perfection began to crack. Her eyes met Louis's, and for a fraction of a second, her calm expression faltered. Prince William, though still some distance away, noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. He glanced toward Catherine. Their eyes met and exchanged a silent, knowing look. In that instant, both of them understood that the situation had escalated beyond what anyone could have imagined. Instinctively, the royal coordination team sprang into action. The event that had started so smoothly was now spiraling into something much more complicated. The royal family cut the event short, leaving 5 minutes earlier than scheduled. The motorcade, originally intended to depart in a slow, formal sequence, was hastily adjusted. Security teams, now in full force, accompanied the family as they made their way back to the palace, their movements no longer part of the public choreography they had rehearsed countless times before. So what exactly had Prince Louis said that had triggered such a dramatic response? What words could have sparked this much urgency, this level of concern? The answer was not immediately forthcoming from any press release. It wouldn't be made public anytime soon. Instead, it would unfold quietly behind closed doors within the palace walls where few could hear it. As Prince Louis was quietly escorted back into the safety of the palace, his words echoed in the minds of those who had been closest to him. The aides, still in shock, had no idea that Louis would repeat the same words with the same certainty, even after the family had returned to the safety of their private quarters. The question now was not just about what he had said, it was about the deeper implications of those words. Words that, when spoken aloud again, would send a ripple of anxiety through those who had heard them the first time. A calm, soft-spoken aide, trained in handling sensitive situations with children, knelt beside Prince Louis. With a soothing tone, she asked him as gently as possible to explain what he had said to the guard. Louis, without hesitation, spoke once again. His words were clear, his tone measured, but it was the meaning behind them that would send a chill through the room. As the aide absorbed the impact of his words, the room fell into an eerie silence. Princess Catherine, who had been standing nearby, went ashen. Her eyes widened in a moment of realization, and in that moment, the significance of Louis's words seemed to crystallize. What had seemed like an innocent comment on the surface now felt like something far more consequential. Without a word, Catherine excused herself from the room, her steps purposeful and quiet. The atmosphere in the room was thick with uncertainty. No one spoke, no one dared to interrupt her thoughts as she left. What Louis had said had hit closer to home than anyone had anticipated. It was more than just a simple comment from a child. It was something much deeper, something far more dangerous. What Louis had whispered echoed a phrase buried in the depths of royal history, known only to a select few. A phrase that, upon hearing it, triggered a level of concern that was not only immediate but grave. The security alert went off, not as a minor precaution but as a major concern. This was no ordinary breach. It was something that required a full-scale response. Within minutes, the palace's internal security level was raised to Tier 31, just one step beneath a complete lockdown. The staff, the aides, and the security team were now on high alert. Every precaution that had once seemed excessive now appeared justified. Guards were repositioned, communication lines secured, and surveillance teams were tasked with reviewing the past 48 hours of footage and logs. It was all hands on deck as they scrambled. To understand just how serious the situation had become. Prince Louis, oblivious to the magnitude of his words, was quietly escorted to a private playroom, shielded from the storm his innocent remark had triggered. Meanwhile, the events unfolding behind the palace walls were a far cry from the royal display that had been intended. The carefully crafted secrecy surrounding the royal family's daily operations had just been shattered, and the consequences of Louis's words had yet to fully unfold. As the hours passed, the palace's most confidential operations were activated. What had once been a perfectly executed royal appearance was now mired in a deep crisis. The question of whether Prince Louis had unknowingly exposed the monarchy's vulnerabilities loomed large. Was this the moment when the royal family's carefully constructed image would begin to unravel? Or could the palace regain control before the damage was irreversible? And so the investigation began, not in the public eye but in the shadowed corridors of power. Those who knew the meaning of Louis's words understood just how profound and dangerous they were. They also knew that whatever had been set in motion could not be easily undone. The guard, clearly startled by what he had just heard, leaned in slightly to catch the words. And then, without warning, the innocent remark Prince Louis had made caused a ripple through the crowd, freezing everyone within earshot. The guard's expression shifted abruptly, his face tightened, his posture stiffened, and his eyes darted quickly across the crowd, locking onto the senior aide standing just beyond the red carpet. Within moments, another guard stationed on the opposite side began speaking into his communication device, his voice urgent. The calm security presence that had been established just moments before now doubled, the air thick with the unspoken tension that had suddenly gripped Buckingham Palace. Outside, the crowd remained blissfully unaware, continuing to cheer and wave their flags, caught up in the festive atmosphere. But inside, the royal family's carefully controlled surroundings were beginning to unravel. Princess Catherine, the ever-composed royal matriarch, acted swiftly and decisively. She placed her hand gently but firmly on Louis's shoulder, guiding him back into line with quiet authority. In that brief moment, the flawless surface of the royal engagement, polished, rehearsed, and crafted for the public, began to crack. For just an instant, their eyes met, Louis's innocent gaze and Catherine's calm one. But this time, for the first time, there was something more. Her usual serenity faltered, her expression momentarily giving way to something else, something she couldn't immediately suppress. From a distance, Prince William too noticed the subtle change in the air. His eyes briefly met Catherine's. No words were exchanged, but the silent understanding between them spoke volumes. Their parental instincts kicked in almost simultaneously, and without a second thought, the royal coordination team shifted into full damage control mode. What had once been a seamlessly orchestrated royal event now found itself in full-blown crisis mode. The atmosphere, once filled with the warmth of royal charm, was now thick with urgency. Without warning, the royal family cut the event short, leaving the crowd 5 minutes earlier than originally scheduled. The motorcade, which had been carefully planned and set to depart in formal sequence, was hastily rearranged. Security presence, once subtle, now doubled behind them, an immediate response to the escalating situation. So what exactly had Prince Louis said to provoke such a swift, dramatic response from the palace? What was it about his innocent words that had sent the security team into overdrive? The answer would not come from a public statement, no press release or official explanation. It was a matter that would remain hidden, discussed only behind the thick, guarded walls of Buckingham Palace. Louis, blissfully unaware of the storm his words had caused, was quietly escorted back inside. But the innocent child would repeat his words again, with the same clarity and conviction, and the consequences would unfold behind closed doors. A soft-spoken aide, trained in child communication and accustomed to handling delicate situations with children, knelt down beside Louis. She asked him gently, with as much care as she could muster, what he had said to the guard. Louis didn't hesitate. He spoke again, his words slipping from his lips with startling ease. The weight of what he had said seemed to hang in the air, and as the room absorbed the meaning of those words, it became devastatingly clear. This was no mere child's remark. In that instant, a heavy silence enveloped the room. Princess Catherine, who had been standing only a few feet away, went pale. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with a sharp, unsettling recognition. Something in Louis's words resonated deeply within her, a recognition that was not born from fear, but from something darker, something she had never anticipated. As the significance of his words settled over her, Catherine's calm exterior crumbled. She didn't speak, but in that moment she knew the full weight of what had just occurred. Her thoughts raced, and without a word she excused herself from the room. The others, standing frozen in place, were left in stunned silence. Catherine's absence spoke volumes. It was as if the room itself had been shaken by the reverberation of Louis's innocent, yet unnervingly prophetic, statement. What Louis had said was no random comment. It was not something a child could have come up with on his own, not in this setting. His words, innocent in delivery, had unleashed something much larger, something deeply unsettling. It was a phrase that had long been buried deep within the palace's most closely guarded secrets, a phrase that should never have been spoken in such an innocent context. In that instant, the royal family understood. This was no longer just a misunderstanding, nor a minor breach. It was something much more profound, something that would send ripples through the very foundations of the monarchy. Without uttering a single word, Catherine excused herself from the room, her footsteps soft but deliberate as she moved toward the palace's quiet corridors. The room, once filled with whispered conversations and hushed tones, now stood still, the staff frozen in place, their expressions caught somewhere between confusion and realization. What Louis had said was no innocent remark, it was something far more unsettling. A phrase that, unbeknownst to him, had been buried deep within the vaults of the royal archives, locked away in a highly classified document known only to a select few individuals in the monarchy. The implications were immediate and profound. The royal security alert was triggered without hesitation, and the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't a simple breach of protocol or an innocent slip of the tongue, it was something far more serious, something that demanded immediate, full-scale action. Inside Buckingham Palace, the internal security level was rapidly raised to Tier 31, just one step below a full lockdown. Behind the scenes, protocols usually reserved for sovereign threats were swiftly activated. Guards who had once blended into the background of royal events now repositioned themselves strategically around the palace. Communication lines were immediately secured, each connection monitored with unprecedented vigilance. Surveillance teams, already on high alert, began scouring every log, report, and piece of footage from the last 48 hours. The staff worked in a quiet frenzy, each move calculated and urgent as they pieced together the implications of Louis's words. Meanwhile, Prince Louis, blissfully unaware of the storm he had set into motion, was quietly escorted away from the chaos. With no comprehension of the severity of the situation, he was taken to a private playroom within the palace, far from the growing tension that now permeated the royal halls. Yet, the ripple effect of his innocent comment spread further than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't just the royal family that was now under scrutiny. The palace's deepest, most closely guarded secrets had been exposed, and the question on everyone's mind shifted dramatically. Was this the moment when Prince Louis, in his youthful innocence, had inadvertently become a liability to the monarchy? Or could the palace regain control before the situation escalated beyond their grasp? As the royal family scrambled to understand the full scope of the crisis, the world was left in suspense. What had Louis said? What had he overheard? What was it that had compelled him to speak such a cryptic phrase in front of the palace guards? And most importantly, how could a child so young have known something so profound and troubling? The answers to these questions would remain elusive for now. But what was certain was that the truth behind these events was poised to unfold in ways that would change everything. The phrase Louis had spoken, "They're watching from the walls," had never been uttered publicly before. It was a phrase buried deep in the classified archives, mentioned only once in a 2002 internal briefing. The briefing had been part of a report regarding a security anomaly that had occurred during Queen Elizabeth II's reign, an event so sensitive, so meticulously guarded, that it had never been made public. It had only ever been referred to in cryptic fragments, veiled in code that few could decipher. But how could a young child like Louis have known such a phrase? Why had he repeated it aloud, and why in front of the palace guards? No one could provide an answer. Inside Buckingham Palace, Catherine, now alone in the privacy of her quarters, was already taking action. She moved quickly but quietly, her mind racing as she made her way to a hidden compartment behind an ornate armchair, a gift from Queen Elizabeth herself, a piece of history passed down through generations. With trembling hands, Catherine pulled out a thin, aged envelope, its corners worn and its seal faded with time. On the front of the envelope was a single chilling word, "Playron." The word alone sent a wave of unease through her. Only a handful of people in the royal family had ever spoken of it, and even fewer knew its true significance. Catherine's fingers lingered on the envelope for a moment longer than necessary, as if bracing herself for what she was about to uncover. With a quiet breath, she carefully opened the envelope, her heart pounding in her chest. The contents were carefully folded, yellowed with age. Inside, she found what she had been seeking, a document, one that had long been buried in the archives, its significance obscured by time and secrecy. The words on the paper, though written years ago, felt all too real, all too immediate. As she read, Catherine's stomach churned. What she uncovered was far more unsettling than she had anticipated. The significance of the word "Playron" was known to only a select few. It was a term that Catherine and the late Queen Elizabeth had spoken of in hushed tones, veiled in secrecy, a word that held the weight of royal history. As Catherine carefully unfolded the contents of the envelope, she found herself on the precipice of something much darker than she had ever anticipated. The document revealed long-buried royal secrets, secrets that, if exposed, could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. These were not simple matters, they were revelations that had remained hidden for a reason. Catherine knew that what lay ahead was something she would have to confront, no matter the cost. The contents of the letter were unsettling, sending a chill through her as she read each word. The weight of the information seemed to hang in the air, and without hesitation, Catherine made the difficult decision. Moments after reading the document, she burned it, consumed by the flames that seemed to mirror the rising turmoil inside her. As the ashes settled, Catherine gathered herself and left the privacy of her quarters with a resolute expression. "We must monitor the East Wing corridor again," she instructed, her voice calm but firm, betraying the urgency that now gripped her. Within minutes, the palace's security operations were on high alert. The wheels of the royal machine began to turn with a precision that only years of preparation could produce. What had Prince Louis unwittingly triggered with his innocent comment? What had he seen that no one else could comprehend? As Catherine quietly navigated the crisis, her thoughts were sharp, her every move calculating. Meanwhile, across town, Prince William attended a military charity event. The grand hall, filled with the sounds of speeches and laughter, seemed a world away from the tension now enveloping the palace. Suddenly, his secure line rang 3 times, a strange and eerie signal. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the line went silent. That single unsettling occurrence sent a ripple through William's composed demeanor. He immediately understood the situation had escalated. Without hesitation, he excused himself from the event and rushed toward the palace. By the time his car pulled into the royal grounds, security had already doubled. 3 stairwells had been shut off and a trace scan was underway. No one knew the cause, but instinct alone had triggered one of the monarchy's oldest, most secretive security protocols. Inside the palace's royal corridors, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. The air buzzed with a sense of foreboding that no one could shake. Older members of the royal family exchanged silent glances, their faces betraying a recognition that only years of history could provide. They had heard similar words before. Decades ago, in the quietest corners of the palace, whispered tales had circulated, tales that now seemed far more real than they had ever dared to believe. Prince Louis's comment wasn't just an innocent phrase, it echoed something far more ominous, a phrase from Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's final private letter, a letter that had been carefully redacted and locked away in the deepest vaults of the royal archives. This connection had long been buried, dismissed as nothing more than old royal superstition, but now, in the wake of Louis's innocent words, it could no longer be ignored. Catherine's search through the royal archives revealed something far darker than she had imagined, a letter titled "Regarding the Watching Ones." The term had been used in secret documents to describe those who waited for the crown to falter, those who lurked in the shadows, watching and waiting for the monarchy to crumble. The parallels to Louis's words were undeniable. What had once been dismissed as mere whispers in the royal corridors now felt like a warning, something answer. And something hidden that had been awakened by a single, unintentional comment. Princess Anne, known for her pragmatic nature, had once scoffed at these theories, dismissing them as relics of a more paranoid time. But now, as Louis's words reverberated through the palace, even Anne fell silent. Her usual stoic expression shifted into one of quiet recognition, her face betraying a deep unease. The whispers from royal history, once trivialized, were no longer just curiosities, they were real and they were dangerous. Catherine, with her sharp mind and meticulous attention to detail, cross-referenced Queen Victoria's diary entries with those of the Queen Mother. What she uncovered was chilling. Children, like Louis, had spoken truths they had never been taught, their innocent words echoing warnings that had been hidden within the walls of Buckingham Palace for generations. The most disturbing revelation came when Catherine learned of a hidden room in Windsor Castle, a vault of secrets once entrusted only to future queens. It was in this room, among the diaries of Queen Victoria, that Catherine found an entry detailing a disturbing event involving her own son, the very same son who had unknowingly sparked this chain of events. The whispers were no longer just royal gossip, they were real and they had resurfaced with a vengeance. As the echoes of history grew louder, Catherine's fear intensified. Prince Louis had seen something that had been seen before, something that had been buried for years. And now, the consequences of that vision were about to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. A final twist came when an anonymous whistleblower within the royal guard leaked a classified incident report to the press. The headline sent shockwaves through the world. Prince Louis repeats code from royal security file, palace in panic. The monarchy, once untouchable, now found itself in the midst of its most serious crisis in decades. The truth behind Prince Louis's chilling words was about to change everything. What had he seen? What did he know? And how would it reshape the destiny of the royal family? The world was waiting for the answers and the story was far from over.